Over the course of the last 4 months or so, I've been following a game called Zoria's This is just a random title for now, but this is being made by AllFenom. This is a one-man person creating this Metroidvania type of platformer, Dark Souls-ish type of game. It's going through development at the moment, and there's still a lot of things to be added, but for the very early demos, it's very promising, and I would like to give my thoughts on what I liked about the demo and really what I think can be added or improved. These are just ideas, so hopefully the developer can get something from this, maybe even if it's just one idea or one thing that, you know, would be pretty cool to add. So the game opens up with Zoria being captured in this dungeon, and this is how the game, at least for now, opens up, which is a interesting idea of having to actually escape this castle in order to go outside after being stranded on this island. I think that is a pretty cool inspiration, especially since the story in this game is going to be heavily inspired by the D&D campaigns he did in the past, which I think is very cool to add some of the D&D stuff, which I'm not entirely familiar with, but I do know some things about it, and I think that having the imagination and the experience of playing that in the past and incorporating that into a game style could add some pretty interesting encounters. So far you have this gameplay which is somewhat similar to harder games, 2D games. He wants to have this gameplay, each enemy encounter to be meaningful in some way, that you can't just spam your attack in order to proceed, which a lot of other 2D Metroidvanias kind of do in some ways, some more than others, some obviously do it right. And I think that was a pretty interesting idea when I was reading that, and that's going to be pretty difficult, I can imagine. So far from what I played, the controls are pretty good. This is going to go more into the combat and what I think can be improved. One thing that I noticed is when you're swinging your sword in the air, the maneuverability is pretty low. I would love to see it maybe being able to go back a little bit more going forward to have more momentum. It feels a little bit stiff as just jumping in the air and you barely even move. I feel like that could be pretty bad, especially when you're using this over like certain pits. So maybe there's an enemy there, maybe there's an enemy in the air that you want to hit, and you don't have this ability to actually move forward in order to get to the ledge, and instead you fall all the way down, losing progress or even dying to a pit or spikes or any other traps. I think that can be improved in my honest opinion, along with some of the other attacks. I feel like having more mechanics, I know this is early on, but these are just ideas. Maybe having the ability to parry enemy attacks, since this is like wanting to be a skill-based game, depending on how you really want to take the character and how the gameplay is going to play out. I think that maybe having somewhat of a parry attack where you can parry and then deal some damage to an enemy straight after with an attack would be a pretty cool upgrade, one that doesn't incorporate stats and instead incorporates skill, offering some way for the players to feel really good about themselves after hitting an enemy or after dodging an enemy's attack. The same can go with the roll. I like the roll. I think that's a pretty cool ability to be able to dodge enemies, but maybe you can step it up a little bit more. Maybe having the ability to do an attack out of the roll. I mentioned this before to the developer, having the ability to roll then do an air slash would be pretty cool to see. I really do like the standard attack. It feels pretty good. It doesn't like last too long, but it lasts long enough where you feel like you have to make it account for each swing. Although you can hold the button, I'm not entirely sure if that's going to be changed in the future, but I definitely think the standard attack along with the animations are pretty good. You have your basic down attack and all of that, which is also something good, along with the bow, which you can use to, of course, fight enemies are either above you, longer range. And the one cool thing that I found in this demo is that the bow can actually pierce through enemies. I think that's a really nice detail, allowing more skill to be played when you're using the bow. For the demo, I didn't really get to test out the shield that much. There wasn't really too many opportunities where I felt like I had to use a shield against anything ranged, but that's something that I didn't really like think about, and I'm assuming that in the future, when you have more enemies to present, the shield will be more useful. One of the other things that I really liked was the inventory. So instead of having like the sub menu or a different kind of screen, you have this bag that Zoria pulls out, and it's just the nice to see that it's an animation, and along with it being at the bottom, so it doesn't take away from the actual gameplay. You can see what's going on, and this is going to be in real time, so that also adds another strategy where you don't want to be in a room with full of enemies, so you have to kind of decide when and where you want to open up your inventory if you have to use it, and having the ability to put the 2 items, and I can imagine so many more items and maybe even a bigger inventory for your backpack upgrades and all of that stuff being incorporated later. I think that is a really cool thing, and being able to expand upon that with having a maybe a more upgraded UI as the game goes on and you figure out how to make some of those things into the actual game. I think that is a really good step so far, so I would love to see more of that. As for these standard enemies, I like how you have these bats that charge at you, something a little bit different from them just like, you know, mindlessly flying towards you, maybe having different variations of bats, maybe having bats with ranged abilities, shooting lasers. I don't even think that's realistic, but anyway, but you know, you understand what I'm trying to say. Having different variations of that, depending on how many enemies you want to add. Do you want to have a lot of enemy encounters, or do you really want to have a little enemy encounters but just have these enemies with different variations? I feel like maybe having just different enemies, people will enjoy more. You might find it a little bit more repetitive if you have too many variations of the same type of enemy, but I definitely think that having at least a couple of those will be pretty good, you know, for the player experience. The last thing I would like to talk about is the animations. So far, the animations for the character, idle animations, the developer wants to add multiple animations for each given thing, and that really gives a lot of personality to the character that you play as. And having all of these different things, especially so far early into this alpha, I definitely think you're doing really well with the animations. I especially like when you die, your character goes to the ground, but then you spawn back at a fountain, and that is pretty cool how like the character just glows and all that and just drops down. I think that is really awesome. So in terms of the animations, in terms of the art style that you have here, along with the fog and the forest being my favorite thing out of this small demo, you are definitely headed in the right direction. And I know that this is a lot of work, especially for a game that you're envisioning, but at the same time, make sure you don't like go too crazy and have the game stall out for like so long. But you know, at the same time, you just take your time with it. I know there's like a fine medium between the two. Some things you might have to leave out because it might be something too big, and other things you can add into the game and maybe change some things up. Maybe the game from 1 year from now will be entirely different, which is always the fun thing about like having the ability to play these early demos and seeing how it progresses. I definitely think, at least for a player perspective, that is just one of the most fun things when seeing development, you know, as long as it doesn't turn out really bad and bug ridden and, you know, like a lot of other games. But yeah, keep up the great work, Phenom. And as each demo improves something, I'll come back to it and give my thoughts to see how it feels. You know, if anything else that I feel like could be changed, or maybe something that could be improved a little bit, or to give other ideas. Hopefully I can help in some way. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this video on this demo that is pretty promising. If you want to follow Phenom or see anything about Patreon or Discord, I'll have links in the description box below. But until next time, take care, and I'll see you in the next video.